farms, and we've had to adapt this format to online in order to keep everyone safe while continuing to learn together. So thank you for joining us. I'd also like to recognize our panelists today, our speakers. We have Mark Walden with us from Regulatia. Give a wave, Mark. And Janet Meyer from Berea College Farm, Horticulture Farm, and Andrew Oles from Berea College as well. We'll get more into introductions in a minute, but first I want to just go over a few housekeeping notes on the technology and sort of what to expect during our time together. Please, for best viewing practices, close other programs and browsers on your device to minimize bandwidth use. And also keep in mind other devices on your Wi-Fi network as well. Shut those down if you can. Depending on your internet service, the pre-recorded videos that we'll show may play with a slight delay. Also, you might have to adjust your volume to hear the audio with those videos, so keep that in mind. On your screen, you should see our PowerPoint, and in the top right corner or on the right side column there, you should see all of our speakers. You can select just the thumbnail video highlighting the current speaker, and you can drag that photo around to any location on the screen as well. Please use the chat function to submit questions for the presenters, and we will answer them in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the event together. The chat button is located at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We're also streaming live to Facebook, so welcome to our friends there. To those of you on Facebook, please place questions in the comments, and we'll get to them as well. We are recording the session today, and we'll make it available via email and on Oak's website after the event. And finally, towards the end of the event, we'll share a post-event survey with you, so please keep an eye out for that. We really appreciate any and all of your feedback there. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to keep this to an hour. I'll share a little bit about Oak's programs to begin with. The speakers will tell a little bit more about themselves, and then we'll really get right into the details of Berea College Farm. And we'll leave all the Q&A for the end. So the Organic Association of Kentucky is a nonprofit organization advancing organic regenerative agriculture in Kentucky to improve ecological resilience, farm economic viability, and community health. We're a network of over 380 innovative farmers, researchers, and community members. Our programs actually reach more than 3,000 people annually. Some of our programs are, we do these annual these monthly-ish farmer field day events throughout the year. They're typically on farms, and we really dive into best production practices and organic systems. We also have organic transition trainers. These are organic specialists that go out and work with farmers one-on-one to help them to prepare for organic certification. We've worked with just over 340 farmers in the past 4 years through that program. So if anyone on here today is interested in that service, please just email us directly and we'll get you started on that process or answer any questions. Our third program areas, we have an annual organic farming conference, and we are going virtual in 2021. So we have moved the date also, so please save the date. We're going to be running that January 26th through the 30th in 2021. And we're working on developing the programming now for that, but I will share an early sneak peek. We have Jean-Martin Portier and Leah Penniman are two of our keynote speakers for that 5-day event. Many more to come, so please stay tuned for that. We also do a CSA program, Kentucky Farm Share Coalition, that promotes CSA across the state. And we do a lot of consumer education and outreach to promote the benefits of eating locally and organically. So we are a membership organization. If you or someone you know would like to join today, you can do that on our website. You get discounts to popular organic retailers and discounts to all of our Oak events, and you get to be part of the network. We also host an online Find a Farm directory to promote our Oak farmer members, and that's available on our website as well. So take a look at that. And it's a tool primarily used to connect our farmer members with consumers so they can find the products they want close by to them. Lastly, I'll mention that we are doing another one of these virtual farm tours with Lazy 8 Stock Farm in 2 weeks on Thursday, August 6th. We'll be looking at organic vegetable systems with Bryce Bauman there, with specific considerations for seeding and transplants, cultivation for weed management, and managing soil fertility and other production efficiencies. So keep learning with us. You can register for that on Oak's website. We definitely want to send a big shout out to our 2020 farmer education supporters. We can't do this work without funders. We are a nonprofit. So big thanks to Patagonia, Globetrotter Foundation, and Round Hill Farm. We are grateful for that support and their belief in developing regenerative organic agriculture and farmer education here in the Bluegrass. And we're super grateful for our partnership with Grow Appalachia. This event is done in partnership with Grow Appalachia as part of their USDA NIFA grant, and we are so grateful. So I would like to hand it over to Mark to share a little bit about Grow Appalachia's work.
Thank you, Brooke. And we really appreciate our partnership with Organic Association of Kentucky. Grow Appalachia is a program of Berea College, and as you mentioned, some of the funding for this project is from the USDA as part of the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program. We are currently managing that program, and this workshop is one of those, one of the projects that we had on the list. We intended for this to be in person, but thank you for being flexible and making this happen in a new format. I think we'll learn a lot today. We will have participant signups for the Beginning Farmer Education Series starting on October 5th. Grow Appalachia offers a number of different other programs. We have technical assistance programs through our direct integrated grower support network. We also have a social enterprise division that puts together agricultural supplies, so irrigation supplies, plastic, high tunnel equipment supplies. And we also have our original program, which is our family gardening program. And that program reaches out into Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, Southern Ohio, and occasionally into North Carolina. We are part of the college. We don't get to spend much time on the farm with Janet and Andrew. I really appreciate them hosting Oak for coming, hosting them on the farm this year. And I'm looking forward to see what kind of video they were able to capture. I know it's an exciting life out there on the Berea College Farm.
Okay. So before we get started, just a quick reminder to our attendees. We have over 100 people registered for this event. It looks like more than half of them are online with us now. So welcome if you're joining just recently. Quick reminder here on a couple things. You should have a full screen view of our PowerPoint and a small thumbnail of the active speaker. You can move that speaker box anywhere on your screen. And please add comments or questions throughout the event on the chat bar that's available through the meeting controls at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this event and it'll be available afterwards. All right, so during this virtual farm tour, our presenters are going to be discussing a lot of production techniques and considerations appropriate for USDA certified organic operations. We'll make reference to the National Organic Program regulations throughout to highlight which practices are related to specific regulations. And where relevant, you'll see the regulation number highlighted in orange in the top right corner of the screen. It's possible it's covered by that highlighted speaker box right now. So if you want to drag that down, you'll see the regulation number there. And the PDF we send out to you, those are going to be hyperlinks, so you'll be able to go straight to the regulation. There's a lot of detail in the NOP regulations, far more than we can cover in just this single event. So I'd like to briefly point out a few major resources you can keep in mind now and refer back to later. First, and they're on this slide here. First, if you're interested in pursuing organic certification, please reach out to us. Oak has organic specialists that can work with you in preparing for certification, and we have templates for everything. Record keeping, we can do production consultations, we help with the paperwork setup, we can help you review your final application on your organic systems plan and help you interpret the regulations. We definitely help take the guesswork out of that and help make it successful for producers. Second, to note here is the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and the Organic Program website. So on that site, Kentucky farmers can see, well, KDA certifies the majority of operations in the state. And through that page, you can get all the details on the application, the OSP, and any other documents you need to submit with them, in addition to the fee schedule. So you should know that it just costs $250 to certify crop. That is the annual fee. You have to do that annually. And you can choose to get up to 75% of that back through the federal cost share program if you choose. The third link here is the U.S. Department of Agriculture National Organic Program. And so the NOP is a federal regulatory program. It develops and enforces uniform national standards for organically produced agricultural products sold in the U.S. So this is where you go for all the information about the regulations. And that's where the links go to throughout the presentation today. This is just a quick look at the National Organic Program regulations online. Each line is a hyperlink, and so you can quickly scroll to the details of a particular regulation highlighted there. So just please keep this in mind as a resource for the future. Okay, now I would like to introduce Andrew Oles from Berea College Farm and Janet Meyer from Berea College Farm. Andrew is the farm manager there. So big welcome to you. He's going to get us started with a farm overview and small grain overview, and then we'll move on to Janet on the horticulture farm.
Thanks, Brooke, and thanks to the Oak staff for putting this together and Mark's hard work to collaborate for starting and beginning farmers. And so welcome to Berea College Farm remotely today. The farm is getting ready to celebrate its 150th birthday, established in 1871, shortly after the college itself was established in 1855. The farm as a whole runs year-round. We produce a field-to-fork model where students get exposure from seed to table, from birth to plate, if you will. And we employ about 45 labor students during the academic year. This will be the special moment in time where we're only expecting half of our student populace back in another month's time. So it's a great learning laboratory that couples both the academic side of the house and the practicality. But that is not limited to our ag and natural resources students. We also get students of various majors: nursing, philosophy, religion, literature, you name it. We employ any and all who have interest in growing food on the college farm. And then our food is found through a couple market channels, predominantly our storefront on campus that produces added value products and sells our grocery items, and in the dining hall for students. And we do sell to a few small restaurants in town. So in that regard, we have multiple enterprises. That would be the livestock side of things as well as horticultural products. So, okay, there we go. We got the next slide. On the livestock end, all of our livestock are pasture raised, but none of them are certified organic. We do maintain an animal welfare approved certification, which is an annual inspection also, just like NOP. And that has its own set of standards, which are similar, but do have their own variations on what is acceptable for animal culture on the farm. So we're raising hogs, roughly 75 to 100 finished hogs a year. Which means we are also growing our own little feeder piglets along, and we keep some sows and a boar. We raise about 125 head of cattle at any given time, also a closed herd. So we have about 45 cows, and then we've got growing stock all the way to finish. And then we also do a variety of poultry. We keep about 250 laying hens. We do about 2,500 broilers, and we do about 100 turkeys for Thanksgiving every year. All of these products find their way to these various marketing channels, and students participate from day-old hatchlings. In fact, we just got turkey poults 2 days ago. We'll have another group of pigs here in about 6 weeks, and they'll be here from birth to finish, and they help load them up, and some even go as far as taking them to the processor to see the full food system in action. So there's a lot of diversity there that students get to participate on. All of our pastures, I will note, are technically certified organic. And at some point we had entertained transitioning to organic livestock, but we have found that we can't make that work internally quite yet. So that's hedging out there in the future, and maybe as we refine our systems, we'll be better prepared to make that transition. So the other piece that often gets lost because it's kind of out there in the campus area, we're 2-mile radius from campus, all of our acreage. So of that 450 acres, most of it is away from campus. So we're growing field crops as well to feed both livestock and humans. We have a 5-year crop rotation, which integrates our cover crops in that rotation so we can produce some grains. We have a year of corn, a year of small grains, and then we do 3 years of hay pasture mix. And so we plant a cover crop classically ahead of our corn ground in the fall for next spring. And then we also integrate our livestock, specifically our cattle, where appropriate. Some of our acreage is fenced, some of it is not. So we bring in cattle as a nutrient management tool, but also a weed management tool. And that helps us. And currently, we're suppressing some Johnson grass ahead of our corn crop next year, because we all acknowledge as organic row croppers in the bluegrass, Johnson grass is a real challenge. So that's kind of how that piece plays into what the College Farm does of crop rotation. We also do some small rotation for pig hog down corn. We would grow a corn crop for pigs to self-harvest. And Janet will relay all of the cropping rotation she has for the horticulture side as well. So that being said, we were able to capture a little bit of grain footage because we just came out of harvest. So maybe we go ahead and watch that, and we'll jump on to the next thing.
Welcome everybody, Berea College Farm. Here in July, we're harvesting our turkey red wheat, which is an heirloom variety grown organically. It was planted last fall, late October, after our corn crop came off. Planted it after we broadcast a little bit of nature's safe fertilizer. Then if the weed pressure is such before it gets too wet in the fall, we might take a tine weeder through and clean up some weeds. And then in the spring it takes off, and here we are now threshing it out to harvest. We'll store some of this seed for next year's crop, which will consistently follow our grain crop of corn. So we're in a 5-year rotation, a year of corn, a year of small grains, typically wheat and rye and oats, and then 3 years hay pasture mix. So this kind of fills in the slot. There's no cover crop before it, and then there's no cover after. It goes bare fallow straight to a hay seeding this fall. So nice little diversification in our supply chain, and it gets used in-house to sell to our bakery and potentially home bakers as well.
To recap there, we do sell grain for human consumption. We also, to note another Oak resource, we sell our organic corn that's livestock feed to coffee feed mills down in Guthrie. They've been really great to work with. And there's a ready market for organic grain in this region, corn and soybeans specifically. There's a lot of sales there. So as you can imagine, 450 acres, there's a lot to keep track of. And with 45 labor students who work a variety of schedules, Monday through Friday, we have a lot of different fields, and they're all uniquely named and mapped per NOP regulation, but also for us internally to disseminate information. You'll see on your screen, this is a map of the horticulture farm. And we've actually expanded the acreage here within the last 18 months. So Jan's got some more space. In fact, we're going to move her across the road and eliminate those two fields, numbers 8 and 9, so that she doesn't have the liability of crossing the road anymore. But to keep track of fields, we then given us that that capacity, we can track where we're harvesting, where we're planting, where we're tilling, because all that needs to find its way into your OSP on an annual basis. And on a bed culture, we might have multiple beds in one field that all have different crop in them. So it gets pretty complex, and keeping some basic maps, as you see here, or the NRCS office can help you map some of your farm as well. That gives you really good resource to then begin to delineate how you're managing your space. With that said, I'm going to turn this over to Janet Meyer, our horticultural manager here at Berea College, and she can kind of give you the depth of all that she manages. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for being here today. And I'll just start in. I wish we were on the ground showing you around. I'm much more comfortable walking around on the farm and showing people what we do. And it's one of the pleasures of the job, is being able to share what we learn there. So yes, we are now just growing on the east side of Scaffold Cane Road in Berea, Kentucky. And we have, probably about 40 different varieties or types of crops, and 8 high tunnels, 2 greenhouses, and we have small fruit, including strawberries, blackberries, and blueberries, as well as an apple orchard. I would say we have been doing this certified organic production for as long as I've been a student and as a staff member there as well. So one of the newer greenhouses we have is a Rimmel greenhouse. It has roll-up curtains and a roll-up top, or a roof vent, and it also has automatic ventilation in it. Automatic ventilation saves us a lot of labor. Initially, we set it up to just be opened manually, and then we installed heaters and automatic ventilation inside. So we have the gas heat, we have thermostats for both the heat and the ventilation in this system. And this is the kind of not very high technology, but enough technology that it reduces the amount of labor required to manage our system. We do grow all of our own transplants, so it's essential to have a greenhouse. I should say virtually all of our own transplants. We do buy in things like strawberries. This is the greenhouse in action. We have a well-organized greenhouse with a potting table. We have different kinds of potting media. We are raising all of our different crops to be transplanted out in the field, as well as crops to sell to the general public. I'm going to say, yes, so here you'll notice that you'll notice the label on our Pro Mix. It has the OMRI or OMRI listed. That's the best way that you can know for certain that a substance that you're using is certified organic. And we're direct seeding into that organic Pro Mix. And we will also use some other supplements to improve our nutrition in that Pro Mix. One of the things that we use as a supplement is feather meal, and also we use sometimes we use a liquid fish fertilizer for fertilizer in those.
So I'd like to point out here just a couple resources for folks to keep in mind. Janet mentioned the OMRI product list, the Organic Material Review Institute product list, and it is really a go-to resource that is farmer-friendly, consumer-friendly. It's an online database, and you can search what's allowed with annotations, or prohibited in terms of an input for organic operations. So please bookmark omri.org now, so you can go back to it as a resource. And I'd like to note here, if you're just getting started in organics or thinking that you would like to become certified organic in the future, look to this list, or ask an oak transition trainer or your certifier, your potential certifier, about inputs that are not on this list. And please keep in mind that once you use a prohibited substance on cropland, that operation must wait 36 months before that land where the substance was applied is eligible to become certified organic. So this is everything from soil amendments to pest control products to potting soil used in transplants. So please keep this in mind. Another requirement of the organic regulations in Regulation 205-204 is that farmers must use organically grown seeds, annual seedlings, and planting stock. And this is a record of your seed purchases is often required to be submitted to the certifier as part of the organic systems plan of that farm. And you'll see here on the right the Excel file, and this is from the horticulture farm at Berea College. Thanks for sharing. And you'll see how it clearly denotes crop type, classification, variety, the source of the seed purchase, and any relevant notes.
Thanks. So here's one of my favorite parts of production on the Berea College Farm is our greenhouse production. We, like I mentioned earlier, we do grow all of our transplants for our crop production, and we also grow plants to sell. One of the nice small projects we've had that has grown significantly is we grow succulents, ornamental plants for the general public, which right now are being sold through the farm store. The succulents are something that students wanted, and they asked if they could do it, and they started growing them. So we raise our own mother plants, and we take cuttings from the mother plants and grow the babies ourselves. Other plants, like Brooke mentioned, we are sourcing our seeds from organic plants. Also, some plants that aren't grown from seeds, like the rosemary or lemon verbena, those are grown from cuttings from mother plants that we save year after year. I would also like to mention with those transplants, we do have insect problems. Many people will find that they have problems with insects at times. We can use our certified organic sprays, but we also have a standing army of beneficials in our greenhouse as part of the process of keeping mother plants in the greenhouse. These aphids, we have a pest like aphids, and we'll notice small wasps that lay eggs in the aphids, and they're a beneficial insect that they parasitize the aphid, and it kills the aphid. And there are times when we don't need to spray or do anything at all. They just exist in our environment after years of being certified organic. We don't buy new beneficials. I don't know if your camera can see that. These have all been parasitized. All these brown and copper colored and black ones are parasitized. There's your living aphids right here. And I'm hoping I can find one that has a hole in it. A little wasp lays an egg in that aphid. Oh, there's one with the hole in its body cavity. Can you see that hole with that camera? Mm-hmm. So this one also, I think, the little wasp has emerged and flown away. I know they're good. So there is a happy medium, a balance in here between beneficials and, you know, sure, I could use a pesticide, but I don't really need to, because we have a balance between the good and the bad. Okay, now talking about many farmers would prefer to use direct seeding in their fields. We struggle with weed control in our operation, and so we raise transplants. So you see in this slide that we have lettuce transplants, and we have some green onion or scallion transplants there, and those will be transplanted by hand or using a tractor and a water wheel setter into the field. This saves us time, and we know that, in a certain sense, it saves us time. We know that when we plant that crop out, we can see it, we know it's there. If we were direct seeding, we're probably going to have more lost, partly because of the weed issues we have. We also, I would like to mention, we do direct seed. If we're direct seeding, we've moved to using a yang seeder or a jang seeder. And that's a very precision seeder. They are kind of on the expensive side, but they're great for growing things like carrots, for growing things like direct seeding kale, that we will direct seeding turnips or Japanese turnips or radishes. So this is a nice tool. We formerly just had an earthway seeder, and it uses a great deal of seeds relative to what the yang seeder does. So you'll save money in the long run, especially if you're growing things like hybrid carrots. You can see in this slide also that we have to lay plastic mulch. We do that with a tractor. It can be done by hand, but we're fortunate enough to have a small 55 horsepower tractor, and that is big enough to use our plastic mulch layer bed shaper. And we also have the water wheel setter so that we can transplant our plants into the field. When we're doing our bed shaping by hand, which we also do, we can use a walk behind tractor with a rotary plow and a rototiller to flatten off the top of the bed and make it nice. And of course, we also have a great deal of hand tools that we use in management, from burners and hoes and rakes, all of the ordinary hand tools you would think of, and quite a lot of harvest tools that you don't see in this slide. One of the things about the high tunnel production is we do try different things. Being a college farm, we have students that want to know how different production techniques work. And so you can see in this slide that we have used natural leaf mulch in one case. And that's with the onions, and the beans are actually on bare ground, but we used leaf mulch for onions. We also had a high tunnel where we had one bed with leaf mulch, one bed with no mulch, and one bed with plastic mulch. That's something that I wouldn't really recommend because the watering needs are so different in the high tunnel, with those different kinds of mulches being used for different crops in there. And then white plastic mulch in the summer when it's extremely hot helps cool down that soil, and it seems to improve our production. So you also see the white plastic mulch, which has some squash in it, and it also has tomatoes in it. And we do grow, we do grow a great deal of our production in high tunnels, even in the summer. And part of that is for disease control. That way for tomatoes especially, they grow better in the high tunnels than they do when we grow them outdoors. Let's see, so we do, part of our production system in the high tunnels also involves improving our soil. Here we are. We have mulch considerations in this slide. I guess I'm one ahead. So we do make amendments to the soil. I've noticed over a period of years that our pH continues to increase in our high tunnels. And when that pH increases, it causes problems for us, and we will amend our soil with either elemental sulfur, or we may use peat moss in some conditions. But there is a great deal of soil amendments going on in there. We also will leave the plastic off in certain years throughout the summer, and we'll plant a cover crop in there, or we might have cover crops in the summer that are heat tolerant, things such as cowpeas or sun hemp. If we're leaving the cover off of a crop, it might have a crop such as a grass and clover mix in it. Let's see. Yeah, and here you see one of the things about our plastic mulch, and that was pointed out to me. We do not leave the plastic mulch in the high tunnels long term. We use weed barrier that you see, this type of weed barrier that you see in this slide for some of our crops. This was used for strawberry production this year, and the holes that are made in it are good for our strawberry production. But we noticed that we had a disease problem there. It was botrytis, and we're making sure that we clean and sanitize. We're just cleaning this non-biodegradable plastic weed barrier with soap and water, and then spraying with a bleach water solution and rinsing that off, and then putting these away to store them till we need to use them again. We're never leaving any of these mulches out in our fields over for more than a year. They're always taken up. And let's see, yeah. Irrigation. So here is another important part of high tunnel production. We have irrigation systems. We have two options in some of our high tunnels that are set up now. We have overhead irrigation or drip irrigation. We have automatic timers installed in the summer. We actually can't leave the automatic timers on there in the winter because they would freeze and they would break. But each one of our high tunnels, and having 8 of them, time management became extremely difficult to monitor exactly when the high tunnels are getting turned on, when are they getting turned off. If anybody out there is a farmer, they know they've woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning at some point and said, oh no, I left the water on in that field or that high tunnel, and you get up and you go turn it off, right? Well, if you're using timers, it's a great reduction in your labor and stress level, so we can set our timers up to water multiple times a day as well, which can improve our crop health. It also, we used to run blue lines from one hydrant to all the different high tunnels and have to deal with organizing when you turned on which one to get them all watered. And now each high tunnel has its own individual frost-free hydrant. And we do have to have those frost-free hydrants because, of course, it freezes in the winter, and we do produce crops in the winter that also need to be watered. So another thing to note is the overhead irrigation is crop specific. We don't use the overhead irrigation on crops like peppers or tomatoes, but we have found that the overhead irrigation works better with our crops like carrots or greens. It really seems to boost our productivity level. And although it may seem like it's using more water, it does seem to grow better crops. Our field production is, we use white plastic mulch to keep the soil cooler for certain crops. So late in the spring, if we're going to be growing things like onions, and you can see in this picture we have onions there, we'll use a white plastic mulch that does help produce better lettuce, better onions, and probably better garlic as well. And let's see, we can reuse one of the things that we've noticed we are able to do with the white plastic mulch or any plastic mulch is if we're growing a short-term crop such as lettuce, we can go back in and pull out the lettuce and plant beans in there, or we could pull out a crop such as kale and plant lettuce behind that, or even Swiss chard, we can plant a crop behind that. So we can get 2 uses out of the same plastic. You do want to consider, you wouldn't want to put lettuce right after lettuce, but we can plant a different crop after that. We do use in our production system some very tall raised beds. That might not be necessary for everyone, but when we use the plastic mulch layer, we set it to make a very tall bed because we have runoff water from the dormitories from up the hill from us, and we tend to pool water in the field, and we wouldn't be able to have much production without those raised beds. We do use the black mulch more for crops like sweet potatoes and squash and tomatoes and melons. We're typically using a black weed barrier that's going to keep that soil warmer. And also you'll notice in this slide that there is something that looks like grass growing between the beds. And this is the first year we've tried it. We started sprinkling teff seed between the beds, and we want to put that in about mid-June, or we could put it in a little bit earlier, right after we lay the plastic beds. And that way we have a grassy pathway to walk in. And we just sprinkled this kind of like scattering chicken feed, and probably could have done it a little bit heavier to get a better cover crop in there. And we have, this is going to be planted with melons, and there's already sweet potatoes planted in there. And let's see, what else do we have here? I haven't mentioned yet that we do use a deer fence. There was a couple slides back, and we do have to have deer fencing to prevent animals from eating all our crops. And we use a 3-string type of deer fence with 2 layers of electric fence to keep the deer out. Also in this slide, I would like to mention that we have, you'll notice that this header, the blue line that's laying there in front of the field, it has multiple bends in it in order to water the field. So this is problematic in a management standpoint. All of our old fields, before we have improved our drainage system for our fields, they're just randomized fields. They're just the size that the fields were when I started working there. And we will be going to a standard field plot size in the future. This is an issue in your planning and as well as the irrigation. So we have started a new plan, which is to have every field plot be 50 feet by 100 feet long. That allows us to have every header be exactly the same as every other header for our irrigation systems. That allows us to do our planning for our seeds based on a 100-foot long row in every field plot. We will have a certain number of raised beds in a 50-foot by 100-foot field plot. And then if we're doing squash, we would have half the number of beds so we can have wider spacing for something like squash or pumpkins, so that the same header will still fit that field. This should save us time, energy, and materials, because we can reuse the same materials over and over again, and we don't have to hunt for them, or we shouldn't even have to label them anymore to maintain what header goes with what field. A person can harvest in these 100-foot long rows. If we were running our rows the whole length of this, it's going to be hard for that person to go through and do that. And so we have easy access between our plots by having a 10-foot wide strip of vegetation. This also is a good place for beneficial insects. If we have really severe rainfall, it's a buffer against soil erosion. Here we have a slide that we have blueberry. We do grow blueberries on our farm. Some of our blueberries are younger, as you can see, and smaller. And we have devised a method of keeping the birds from eating all of our blueberries. And we have a very low-tech method of not tearing up the netting over the blueberries. And that's like we've taken some plastic drink bottles, like plastic water bottles, and placed them over the ends of the T-posts so that we don't tear our netting over the blueberry plants. I would also like to mention here that we do take soil tests of for all of our crops, each and every crop, for every field and every high tunnel, so that we know what the pH is and what nutrients we may need. Or we also learn from our soil testing whether we need to stop doing a certain production technique, like we may need to stop adding compost to our fields. So we base our decisions on how we're going to manage the nutrients in our systems by soil testing, not by guesswork. We clean and sanitize all of our food contact surfaces. We wash this with a soapy water, basically just dish soap and water. Squeegee it off, spray it with a 200 parts per million bleach solution, allow that to sit on the surface for at least 2 minutes, and then we squeegee that off, and if there's any residue still on the table, we'll wipe that off with a cloth or a paper towel. So here we have our harvest and storage. In keeping with all of our organic standards, we do keep records of everything we harvest, and then we have a format where we keep those records, and all the students are trained in the record keeping too. Then we have 2 different walk-in coolers so that we can store our produce at 2 different temperatures, because things like tomatoes shouldn't be stored at refrigeration temperature, and we keep those in a cooler that's 55 degrees rather than a cooler that's 40 degrees or 38 degrees. We use a CoolBot to manage the temperature in our cooler, and simple air conditioning units. This is a great system for us and very appropriate for a small farm. So I want to thank you all for attending today. And like I said at the beginning, I wish that we were in person on the farm, and hopefully we will be again someday. For those of you who are new farmers, keep asking questions. I am available to answer questions. You can send me an email. I think there will probably be contact information at the end of this. I do think that you all can succeed at farming and learn from others, as well as our own mistakes, and continue producing food for our communities. And I want to thank Oak and Grow Appalachia for sponsoring this.
All right. Thank you so much. Huge thank you to Janet and Andrew and Mark for joining us, and to all of our attendees on the line with us today. I just want to take a quick minute. Viewers, if you would like to connect with these speakers, this is all of their contact information. We'll send it out in the post event also, but do a quick screenshot or look for our follow-up email for that. They're great resources. So if we don't get to all the questions right now, we'll be sure to follow up with you. So on that note, we are going to do Q&A for the remaining 10 minutes. If you have a question in mind that you haven't asked already, please go to the bottom of your screen under the chat bar, click on that, and the chat column will pop up on the right side, and you'll see questions that have already been asked, along with some responses from our panelists. Please put your questions there. We're here for 10 minutes, so let's just hash it out together. Also, please note that we are asking all of our attendees to do a quick participant survey. We develop programming based on what our Oak members and our program attendees want and need. based on that feedback. So please take just the 2 to 5 minutes it'll take to give us feedback and what you need as a producer. We'd be happy to develop something for you. Chances are there are a few other people out there that would like the same thing. So please give your feedback there. Jenny's going to drop the survey link in the chat bar, and you can get it there, and we'll also send it out in the follow-up email. If you're joining us through the Facebook Live session, go ahead and send an email to jenny@oak-ky.org. We don't have your registration info if you're meeting us there, and so we'll be sure to email you all of the program follow-up information as well. Okay, let me share, before we get to the Q&A, this is a sort of quick rundown of some organic resources you can consider, both for the organic standards, but also there are a lot of links in here from ATRA and Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, SARE. They're great production resources there. And I want to point out too that we give to a lot of farmers we work with all the time in the field the crop rotations on organic farms and managing cover crops profitably. These are free online PDF books for download, and they're incredible resources. So please check those out. Like I said, a lot of great information there. So we'll move on to some Q&A. Please use the chat box and we'll get to some questions here. Let's see, we have one question from Lisa Hancock. Does anyone have experience using Berea brassica for pest control? Anyone? Anyone? No? Janet, is that something that you're familiar with?
Hold on here. Oh, no. Wait, I've done something bad. Okay, here. I'm sorry, Brooke. What was your question?
We have a question from Lisa. Does anyone have experience using Berea bassiana for pest control? I don't have familiarity.
I've heard of it, but I haven't used it.
Okay, Lisa, we will check in with a couple entomologists and email that response back out to the group. Thanks for that. Okay, we have a question from Jason Rogers here. Why not lettuce behind lettuce? What's different about chard after lettuce?
We practice crop rotation in keeping with our organic standards, and also just for the health of the plants. You might have certain plant diseases in the lettuce that the Swiss chard is not going to have, or the nutrient needs of the two different crops are different.
We have another question from Lisa. It looks like some of you already replied to it. Who else has used TEF? Does it winter kill? And how long does it take to get a good cover with that?
The TEF does winter kill, and it only took about 2 weeks to get a decent cover. We probably didn't, I think it would be better to use a drop seeder rather than scattering the seed by hand to get a heavier coverage of seed than we had in the field that you saw. It is very quick. It's pretty impressive. And it does winter kill. It's a tropical grass.
Yeah, those two photos that we had in the slide there, they were like 2.5 weeks apart, I think. So it came on pretty quickly. There was a question too about where is the TEF seed sourced? And I see comments in the chat from our speakers that Welter seed is a good source, and Albert Lee seed is also a good resource. Okay, Janet, there was a question about, is that a homemade salad spinner?
Yes,
you
it
talk
is.
About that kit? And
we have since, it is. Matt Wilson with Grow Appalachia built that.
Is it going to look like it did in the video long term, or was it a certain?
No, we've already put a casing around the outside of it to make it look safer. I mean, it is safer, yes.
Okay.
There was another question related to that about whether or not you had to dry the lettuce after the spin. Is it sufficiently dry coming out of the spinner?
It is, yes. Yes, the lettuce is it's a great deal drier than with a hand spinner or even a small electric spinner that we had. And the time, we used to only be able to spin about 1 pound of lettuce at a time. And now we can spin 3 or 4 pounds of lettuce at a time. It's very exciting.
I'm wondering if you all would like to, panelists would like to comment on where you do soil testing and what kind of reports you're looking for from those labs.
At the Berea College Gardens and Greenhouse at this moment in time, we're getting all of our soil tests from Extension. If I think that there is a problem with the nutrient deficiency, I may ask for a more detailed report, like a micronutrient soil test, and that'll be a little bit more costly. We actually get some no-cost soil tests through Agriculture Extension, but that's who we use. There are other sources of soil testing.
Yeah, I'll just echo on the row crop side. We use the same resource, and as Mark noted in the chat, we do pay $5 extra to get an organic matter test. That way we can keep track of that as well. So hopefully if we're doing a good job with our rotations and our soil amendments and our livestock integration, we're building our soil organic matter over time. So that's something we want to keep an eye on as well.
We use University of Kentucky Extension for soil test, as well as Waters Ag, which is out in Western Kentucky. Reports are very similar for both. And like Andrew mentioned, I do recommend that you get an organic matter content for your soil just so you can track it over time. And that's part of the NOP is you want to always be improving your soil health. And you have to have a way to verify that improvement. The only other thing I would add is if you're using a high tunnel, that you get a soil salinity test so that you can watch that salinity level over time. So if you start to have a buildup of salts, it can affect your production when the soil has a high level of salinity. And so if you get that early on, and check it at least once every 2 years or so, you should have a pretty good idea whether or not that number is going up or staying stable for you.
All right, it looks like we have one more question asking if you do any no-till cover crops.
I don't in the horticulture section, although we have tried it before. We've grown rye as a no-till cover crop and rolled it down and planted some tomatoes in it by hand. And the tomatoes did grow very well, but it was a great deal of work. And there were some fairly unhappy students when we were digging into that heavy cover crop to plant our tomatoes by hand.
We do use no-till cover crop extensively on the row crop and livestock end. Specifically for livestock grazing, we will chase winter annuals with summer annuals for grazing to fill in our fescue slump. Typically this time of year, fescue shuts off, it gets too hot. So we plant sorghum Sudan grass for the summer months, and then we plant annual ryegrass, or just annual rye, sorry, cereal annual rye for the winter grazing period to try to fill in some gaps. Typically, spring and fall is the majority of our no-till cover cropping. We have not done any no-till cover crop for planting row crops into recently. It's been done in past prior to the row crop transition to organic production. Previously, it was conventional, so we could do pre-emergence and post-emergence herbicide applications. But since we've transitioned, we have not got our weed pressure under control such that we could maybe dabble in no-till and feel like we have a successful corn crop.
All right, well, we are at 3:01, so I'm going to do just a quick wrap up for everyone. To all you viewers, please take a couple minutes to complete the survey. The link is in the chat bar there, and we'll be sending it out over email too. Your feedback is really important to us, so thank you for that. And also a quick reminder about our next virtual organic farm tour coming up in 2 weeks, Thursday, August 6th, with an up-close look at organic vegetable production at Lazy Eight Stock Farm with Bryce Bauman. There's a link to register on Oak's website, and we'll also send that out in the email follow-up to this event. Please join us for that. We have a lot of great footage from that event. I did notice that some of the live streaming videos didn't work very well for folks joining us on Facebook Live. We will have a whole recording of this event that'll be available on our website, so you'll be able to check all the videos there. Apologies for that, that Facebook delay. And so attendees, thank you so much for joining us today. And a big thanks to Janet and Andrew and Mark. Thanks so much for sharing the Berea College Farm and Grow Appalachia with us. We appreciate all the wisdom you've shared with us today. And here's to staying in touch and continuing the learning. Thanks all.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks all of our participants.